Kathy, how can you say, though, that the machines are definitely working when you had voters clearly saying that they were having a problem, and your numbers show something's not right? How can you say the machines were working?
Because we have just indicated that the machines are working by doing the machine recount, and we have, just because someone undervotes doesn't mean that there is an error with the machine. I believe that it was all either voter intent, people that chose to leave the race blank, or people made voter error and overlooked the race, but it was not the machines that caused the problem.
Will the ballot styles be reviewed?
It's been a long 2 days. It's been a long 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'd really like this answered real quick.
For your time.
Kathy, voters are clearly saying that they couldn't get their votes cast. How can you say that the machines were working? It's a question that needs to be answered for people.
We have a report at this point that was scheduled to be our Supervisor of Elections, Kathy Dent. My understanding is that Ms. Dent is not feeling well, has laryngitis and a lot of difficulty talking, and she has sent a representative here to talk to us, Scott Farrington.
Kathy Dent is very disappointed she could not come here today. She does have pneumonia, so she does have an excuse. Madam Chair and members of the Commission, I had been looking forward to addressing you today on the impending purchase of a new voting system. Finally, I would like to dispel a myth about an alleged cozy relationship with a particular vendor. There was no evidence of this presented during the committee's deliberations, only innuendo.
I guess I've seen a little too many documents relating to the fact that ES&S has tried to put pressure on our Secretary of State, Division of Elections. They issued a letter called Hype Over Hacking Shouldn't Shatter Confidence. This was an article that Kathy Dent put in the voting place last November, which I think was attempting to influence the voters to vote against our county charter amendment, which I think is wrong. As far as I'm concerned, that's too much influence.
This was a letter sent to ES&S from Kathy Dent, and she says, any questions, call her husband.
I have received a copy of a cover letter of facts where Ms. Dent, it was sent from Ms. Dent, but the comment said that any question should be referred to John Dent.
The Department of State has asked for the election parameters to be turned over to Election Systems and Software. What I have done is drafted a contract, and I'm asking the representative from the Election Systems and Software to sign that contract. She's here with the authority to go ahead and do that so that we can give the parameters of the election to ES&S to assist with the audit process.
And so when I saw that as a citizen, I wanted an answer to that question, and since you sit on this committee, I did not have the opportunity to just courtesy call and say, what is this?
I'm glad you asked that in a public forum, so I have an opportunity to talk about it. Back when we were getting ready to do the recount, I got an email from David Drury, the Department of State, asking me, would I please turn over our election data to ES&S so that they could start reviewing it in preparation for the state's audit.
ES&S has made the request, and the request is to obtain your election definition and your TXT files. What they want to do is take a look at to see if there was any problems with the coding or with the coding in conjunction with the firmware version that's being deployed here in Florida, see if there's any anomalies.
If there are anomalies in this election, then we should know it in this recount. They shouldn't be able to come in and fix the anomalies. That's part of what this process is showing.
I talked about it with my husband, who is an attorney, and he said, well, he's run into situations like this in representation of property appraisers. And because I didn't have time, and we were really, you knew everything that was going on with, preparation for the recounts, starting the recounts. And my husband actually drafted that a statement to protect us, which he uses with his property appraisers, for E&S to sign that they would not release
any of the information from our election results.
What are they going to be doing?
They are not providing any services. They're here to observe our recount. We have a process that is prescribed by law. We are continuing through with that process. They have no access to any of our equipment or any of our ballots. They're only going to be looking internally at the way we programmed the election to see if there are any anomalies that they can see. It's not going to have anything to do with the recount or with the manual recount.
My husband received no remuneration. He was convenient. He was an attorney. He had a similar document. And as it turned out, we never really used it because the audit was postponed. It didn't happen until further down the road, and so it was not given.
Was the data that you referred to actually sent to ES&S?
Eventually it was.
The Department of State came back and said, oh, the contract was merely a courtesy, and the state had access to all equipment and personnel anyway, and so they said, we have access anyway, even without this contract.
So the contract is, from the ES&S standpoint, is meaningless.
Right. In other words, the implication being we, at that point, apparently meant the Department of State and ES&S had access to all the equipment.
You know, I don't know how they actually did all of that because, you know, the audit was the state's audit process and the state lab as well.
Was the agreement ever, before you signed it and faxed to ES&S, was that ever given to any of our county attorneys?
No, it wasn't. It was presented to the canvassing board, and Kathy Schneider was there, at which point the canvassing board said they didn't want to do that.
So at this time, we're going to sign those contracts.
I'd like to oppose that until I've had a chance to read the contract myself.
I don't know why this would take away any of the power of the canvassing board and why this requires a contract and why the vendor should be involved in this process of going into the software while a recount is in process.
Is David Drury the appropriate person that is in charge of state audits?
He was who, as the voting system, the chief of the voting systems certification, that was who the Secretary of State had to head up the audit team.
So Kathy, just in a normal course of things, when your office needs legal services, do you work with the Office of the County Attorney or someone else?
I work with the Office of the County Attorney for the most part. Okay. This was one evening. Okay. John had that. It was available. He adapted it for us. I mean, he provided the county a good service.
It was a good election. Now we're following through with the processes that state law mandate, and we'll see it through to the very end. Stand by the machines. Yes.
I think we're a little too close right now to our vendor. I'd like to see us a little more at arm's length, that ES&S subcontracts out their repair, and that we've had 3 different subcontractors in for the repair. It's a problem for me. I mean, I think that there are problems with, you know, access to our equipment, software, and things along this line.
I'd like to respond to that. In 2001, when we took, well, actually, January of 2002, when we took possession of our new voting system, it was the goal of my staff and I to become as vendor independent as quickly as possible. Charlotte County, to this day, still has the vendor program. So for you to characterize...
You're saying the ballot definition file.
Ballot definition file, the whole 9 yards. And there are counties and jurisdictions that do that. For you to characterize us as being too cozy with the vendor, I think is a mischaracterization.
My staff and I maintain a professional relationship with this particular vendor and expect to do the same with whomever the county selects. No matter what decision the county makes, we are ready to go forward with the voters of Sarasota, for the voters of Sarasota County.